What's going on, everybody? This is Future Automation, the place where imagination meets reality. Welcome to another episode of Weekend Talks, where we are going to unwrap the cloud security with SAMIK Roy, and this is Tejas. So, thank you, Samik, for joining me and giving me your time. It's really exciting now today that I'm going to talk with you about the cloud security, and I'm keen to learn what all things I'm going to get from your end. So, let's extract some of the information. Uh,
Ye- Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
thanks a lot, Tejas, for the invite and really, excited to talk about cloud security and I have been working. So yeah,
Okay, so before going into questions and all the discussions, I want that, would you like to give a quick intro about yourself? Like, what are you in,
yeah,
and how did you end up
uh,
in cloud security and stuff?
uh, that's really, I mean, again, my path is really not that structured, I would say, but right now I am a cloud security architect in one of the Microsoft partners called Ontinu. And I started my career as a developer, and then we especially got into Azure and started working the leading SIEM product called Sentinel, and I started working on monitoring and things like that, and also started contributing to the community because from day one Sentinel was open source. So and started making pull requests to the repo, and alongside work, I became a very regular contributor, and as of today, I think I'm in top five, right? And by writing really several workbooks. So there are times when I talk to our customers. So I'm proudly able to say that okay, this is something we have developed in the past. If you any customization, happy to help, something like that, right? So that was my journey from developer to a cloud security person. So it was more of tweaking and learning through the community, and I also do talk in a lot of community events. So yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Samik. And I think I have been attending a lot of meetups where you have spoke, and it's really great to hear you because it gives us a lot of information. So keep it going, and it's always great to hear you. Okay, so
Yes.
I think it's kind of a shift that you have done from developer to cloud security expert, and I know that there is a lot of experience that you would like to share with us. So let's get into it. So there will always be a common question about any domain that you are discussing. So what exactly is cloud security? And according to you and all the like experience that you have worked in this domain, why do you think it is so important and why this topic is being pressed so much?
So, when not only in my transition, but with the customers I have worked on, I instead of saying cloud security is important, but the fundamental shift is cloud, right? And there are various reasons for that. Now, one of the pushbacks people don't want to go to cloud is people think that, or the customer think that that's not secure. My data might get stolen, compromised, and things like that. So within on-prem and or pre-cloud, right, we have a lot of confidence because most of the cases we were able to see the servers where our data is in, or at least we know where exactly they are, right? So with the shift in cloud, the
Mhm.
fundamental thing is way that's taken care by the major vendors like Microsoft, AWS, and GCP, and things like that. But that opens up a possibility. Okay, we don't know where exactly the data looks like, or we lose control of lot of layers, for example the network layers and things like that, which are abstracted by the vendors and the providers in a great and optimized way. So as I say, every good thing has a fear to it, right, on an adoption side, because business, a business once impacted can lose its 100 years of reputation, and that's where
Yeah.
most of the business, or I'd say all the business, care about. So the importance is lying in here. You have to be knowing the security, cloud security, before you move into cloud, so that once you go there, either you go there confident, right? And then if you are already in there, right, you stay confident and also keep increasingly value to your business. So and from a
Mm.
developer, the mindset I see, right, I mean it's every other developer story. When we write code, we really don't bother about security, just being honest here, right? So with that
Yeah.
said, with cloud security, so earlier what used to happen being on-premises developer, you write a code, you give the code to someone else, they deploy, and then there is a audit happens on the tool and code and things like that. So there were there is a mixture of your code being written to your code being deployed to production, and there are a lot of personal dependency and a lot of manual interference was there, and there was a great chance that a wrong code, a code which invokes a bug or a threat goes into production. That's number one. Apart from that, in if you're writing an on-prem environment, right, really, if that goes and runs an isolated server, you cannot take any of the open source code or kind of refer, I would say we call it npm repos, or maybe any of the repositories or any of the Python libraries, for example, and refer it from directly in the repo, right? Those possibilities were very, very remote. But in these days, everything goes online, and even the module we load, right? Any code we write, we have the flexibility to get the data from or get the libraries from open source. So first of all, when we shift to cloud, right, this opens from a developer standpoint two entry points. One, your code really, like if you talk about GitHub being great product on DevOps side, right, which makes sure that you don't key in your password, you don't keep any secrets, or you are following a right process. If somewhere production goes down, right, we can exactly revert back with a minimal effort. That's one thing. And day by day, we being a developer, we try to focus on the code optimization. We try to focus on writing the exact logic in the code, and then try to import or try to kind of extract, I would say, a lot of pre-built packages, right, or dlls or libraries. So that also have a lot of security loopholes maybe, and everything goes through their own life cycle. So with cloud security, all those possibilities are controlled, right? Because you can put a DevOps pipeline. Even when you run your code, you can restrict the port numbers and how your application is being built and things like that. So one thing is, the fear of losing control. uh, that's where one thing. Second thing is the adoption of open source. These two are, I've seen the major point from being a developer and a security person. And as of today, if we just look back, or just look forward where I am today. Today when I talk to developers, I really have a comfort zone to talk to them, that you don't need to worry about things if you even if you do something wrong, because developers job is to focus on business logic and write the code and make sure it works, right? They should not be worried about what are the dependencies they are loading. Are they good? Because that time is not honestly given to them. So the security mechanism is built, or the cloud security posture management has to be in such a way that everything is filtered out before even it comes to production. So yeah, that would be my summary. Yeah.
One thing I realized from your first answer only, that you have a fair advantage since you have worked both as a developer and right now as a cloud expert, that you have perspective
Yeah.
of both the both point. So you can have a perspective of developer as well as a cloud. So that adds, I think, a fair advantage when you're working even in cloud, that you can foresee the issues that a developer might face in a
Yeah.
kind, in a structure that you might be creating in a company. And you can, before it happens, you can prevent it to some extent at least, although we cannot do it fully anytime, but I think you can cover it up almost, so that since you have worked in both sides, I think that is really great thing.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I think one more thing, that now since we are going into the security part, one thing that I wanted to ask you, since you have worked, and you must have worked as a in a traditional traditional security as well, or you might have had some experience, and now as you're working in a cloud security as well, what difference do you find in both of them? And like, is there any major shift that has happened from the traditional to the cloud security?
So that's a great question actually, and the biggest shift or biggest change, I would say, what I've seen is, if you talk about the previous traditional security, right, and earlier the typical software management life cycle was 3 years. Any software comes in, even for that example, if you look at very, I mean, I have been coding a while now, so if you look at those antivirus days, right? Sorry, just give me one sec. Sorry for that. So, fundamentally, the biggest shift, what I observe is, in traditional days. everything had a schedule, right? I mean, it's very difficult to go out of schedule, and even if there is a deployment, there's a schedule. And same used to happen in terms of security. The security update has to happen on a schedule, and you buy a tool, right? You deploy to one of your, you buy a scanner for any of the vendors, you deploy to one of your servers, and then you scan all your code. That stays there. There's no way, like, there are like 50 other organizations using the same tool, but there were no concept of threat sharing, right? I mean, company A gets some threat, right? There is no chance that has to go to company B, or at least that has to come. If that has to come, that is to come on the next release. So maybe that was a huge gap, right? But with this cloud security and this threat sharing feed, right, there are a lot of open source models. There are a lot of protocols, like for example, if you talk about taxi, if you talk about misp, or best thing like what is my ip, or things like that. So if you look at those protocols, right, so and the very good example is Microsoft Defender. So that does a real time detection, and compared to traditional antiviruses, which used to get the virus vault update once in a while, and somebody, if they change the signature of the virus, or basically if someone is good at coding, right, they open the code and then change a tweak and then change the entire output hash of the virus, you get a new virus which antivirus cannot scan.
Yeah.
So now there
Yeah.
are two evolution has happened. One is the threat sharing, so anybody in the world gets a signature that gets into a central place, and then that's get notified, right? Apart from that, the things are getting really behavioral, because earlier you have 50 users, you have 50 different antivirus installation in 50 different devices. Now, though they are different, let's say Defender as an example, but you have a central console, right, to understand the behavior. If this is an organization, there are 50 people, what typically they do, what typical time they log in, what typical time they log out, anything goes out of balance. And with the era of AI, email, right, and that's like inbuilt, and that also is coming day by day into security. And that's only possible because we have really huge data in place, right? So that is another shift, or that is another addition, I would say, which is really being beneficial. And then a lot of attacks, if you talk about 0 days, or other vulnerabilities which gets fixed faster, right? So yeah, those are the two things I see.
Great. So since you mentioned about the threats, what do you think are the common threats in cloud security?
So see, cloud security. So fundamentally, there's no, I'd say, hard documented thing that this is threat. And so if we really want to categorize, first of all, cloud itself comes with a really zero trust network, framework. So that's
Mhm.
called ZTNA. If you follow that approach, like give so cloud security says, instead of attack happening, right, you be prepared, because you are going in a vendor given environment, right, or
Mhm.
in a cloud environment. So place zero trust, so that give least privileges, keep the right data in right place, make sure data is encrypted. So those are kind of
Mhm.
hygienes, and that hygiene basically cuts down most of the threat. But as technology evolves, so the bad actors evolve as well. Now in that case, there are really ransomware attacks, right? And there are phishing attacks. Even phishing being one of the oldest attacks, or brute force being one of the oldest attacks, right? So if you look at, even when I talk to my colleagues, my network, right, and a lot of time, we find that it's very common that you keep a password on somebody's birthday. So that's the easiest target for brute force. So maybe they are old, right? But people takes time to kind of get out of the mindset. I mean, you can hardly,
Yeah.
because password is always a salt hash, so you
Mhm.
cannot literally see it, but you can definitely guess it. When I mean, I've seen people have experienced with them, like if you have a conversation with them, right, you won't even realize that you have already shared your password with them.
That's what.
So social engineering, yeah. So those traditional attacks still stay the same way. It's just that
Mhm.
the notion of cloud security says that put your hygiene in such a way that you are outside of those attack scope, or I would say attack surface.
Minimizing.
That's like minimizing them. Now if you
Mhm.
really want to break it down from an attack standpoint, you have to understand the MITRE. I mean, mostly Microsoft or most of the other vendors follow the MITRE framework of kill chain, initial access, and going further. Now if you really want to break down, you have to break down all our assets, because with the era of this remote culture, right, there's no perimeter as such. Earlier there used to be perimeter, like you have to go to office, you can connect mails only from an office network, you cannot do outside it. Like even if you have to send a mail or you have to do some deployment, you have to get to the office network, connect to the LAN, and then do that, right? But that's not the case today. Now for that, you have to segregate things like what are my identities, what data they bring in, what are the applications they are using at this point in time to bring that data in or transfer the data, right? And each aspect has its own security protocols also. And compliance sits on top of it. As I said, compliance also works more or less as a hygiene. Like if we talk about any industry, there are HIPAA compliance, there are GDPR compliance, right? So these are built not only as a policy to protect you, also to help you in a better, better shape from a hygiene standpoint in cloud security. So yeah, that's what I would see.
Yeah, one thing like now when you said about this, I like pin out one of the word that is identities. So like, can you so since this audience might be a newbie for cloud as well and security
Yeah.
terms, considering me in that line, because I am also far away from understanding a lot of things. So like, can you explain what exactly are identities in a very simplistic term?
So identity is, as the English says,
Mhm.
you have a username password. That can be like anything. That can be, the password can be
Mhm.
a security key, password can be your second factor authentication, but you are tagged as an user. So in Microsoft
Mhm.
terms, we call it user principal name, and that's going to be
Mhm.
unique. So you work for company A. In company A's domain, right, you have a very unique identity. That's is what is your identity. So that's like, that's the thing, or that's the attribute what unifies you from the other people in the organization, right? That's the
Okay. Okay.
simplistic thing here. Now to
Mhm.
look at me as an identity, I have to get authenticated, right? And then I have to get authorized. So the simplest example for authentication would be like, if I go to a park, right, to get a
Mhm.
entry in the park, I have to get authenticated, like I have to have an entry ticket or something like that, right?
Correct.
And then when I go to a ride inside a park, based on my ticket grade, right, I'll be allowed if I can take or cannot take the part. That's the authorization piece of it, right? And
Mhm.
entire application stack is built on authorization, right?
Correct.
Authentication
Correct.
is common for all,
Mhm.
right? But authorization is what makes you different, like what kind of privilege you have, what data you see, right? That's, I
Mhm.
would say, the simplest this thing, of an identity. And
Nice example.
yeah,
I
and
think
if you want to
people
secure
can
it,
relate.
yeah. Yeah, and again, we do not have a single identity in this age today. If you talk about cloud security, I think Google Drive is one of the best example, and most of us use it because it's free, right? Now
Correct.
to get a Google Drive with us, right, we have to have a Google Gmail account, and that's our Google identity. Now if you look at all the products, and any point of time anybody goes and clicks on the Google thing, so there are three dots, ellipses on the right hand side top, to be specific. You can see it's not only the Google Drive, there are a lot of features, lot of products which comes with Google account itself, right? You click one of them, and once you sign into your Gmail, right, you never have to sign in anywhere else. That's what is identity for us in the Google. So yeah.
Yeah. I think most of the companies who are having some kind of social platform or multiple services, they are trying to do the same thing. They are trying to create one identity for everything, and because people, they need convenience at the end of the day. They are like, I don't want to remember the 5, 10 passwords and user IDs. So once you log in, as you said, one of the best example is Google itself. Once you log in Gmail, I think Drive, Docs, your contacts, your Android phone, everything is synced together. So that is, I think that is great in one sense, but still you need to be very cautious about the information that you're keeping and sharing with anyone, because such ecosystems, if one thing gets out, I think most of the things are easily accessible.
So,
So
so that's a great point, and that's where the security kicks in, right? So
correct.
whatever you do, or whichever app you're using, right, that particular app is not responsible to store your identity. That means nobody can steal your identity from an app which you're using. Maybe you're using Google service, right? So nobody can most probably the difficult piece would be to try to get your password through your OneDrive, sorry, Google Drive login. So
Correct.
same thing goes for Microsoft. So the identity store, like for example, Microsoft uses Azure AD behind the scene, and recently they used announced it as Entra ID, right, which is beyond the
Hmm.
scope to have more generic ID, right? Now that particular identity provider is where your auth token is generated, and that token is circulated. Now you
Correct.
are still identified only by that provider. Nobody else can, you know, say that this is user, this is stages, or this is some things like that. Every app
Hmm.
where you set up an sso, right, that app has to come to that particular identity provider, show them, okay, this is the user, is it the right user, yeah, go ahead, and things like that. So yeah.
Hmm.
So and from a convenience standpoint, as you say, it's obviously convenient, and most of the organizations as of today try to buy or try to integrate with the apps which are in sso. That's one, for convenience. And second thing, the access part, that's again comes and ties with the zero trust, right? So give the least privilege to the people who should be seeing the tabs. So yeah.
Correct. Yeah, and one more thing, like since you mentioned, brute force and phishing, I think phishing is one of the old, but still one of the common things that is seen in a lot of companies. Even companies are trying
Yeah.
to test the employees by sending phishing emails to see if the employee is
Yeah,
aware or not, and a lot of trainings are going on around it.
exactly. Even there are products which are like, again, I mostly work on Microsoft, so maybe that comes up most in my conversation. But if you look at Microsoft landscape, there are like, there is a specific option in the products called attack simulation training, where you can really, put your payloads, put your mail. You have all the rights to write an email and then send it to the employees you want to. Anybody clicks in, you get a report. So that's like,
Hmm,
in a false sense, you are phishing them, but also it's like educating them. Yeah, that's a safer way to
correct.
educate in a controlled environment. Yes.
I think the people who read the emails very least are saved from
Yeah.
phishing.
Again, if you look at that, right, let's try to step back from an org scenario. If you look at the daily scenarios, like on an average, so most of the financial frauds happen, I've seen, people used to send me, okay, scan this QR code and then you win this prize. And the moment
Hmm,
you scan
hmm,
it, it's actually asking money from you rather than you
correct.
getting money. So again,
Yes.
that's another example. So obviously.
Yeah. And people usually, like a lot of cyber attacks, people usually find the way around. Now, since we got UPI to pay, a lot of people have been fraud again with the same thing that you mentioned, scan the
Yeah.
QR code or click on the link and they'll request you for money and they're calling. And now people are trying to expose it on live videos as well. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos where they are talking to that call center, who are showing as if they are call center and they're asking you click on this and pay the money and you are this money will be added in your account.
Obviously, that's a good part. And even being in India, so from a government standpoint also, there are initiatives where you can be a
Correct.
silent volunteer to report it. So that's like, these are the good
Hmm.
parts, right? From an
Yeah, yeah,
education
correct.
standpoint. So
Hmm.
cybersecurity is not only from an IT standpoint. As a human being, as a responsible citizen, you should also know and try to follow some basic hygienes.
Correct, correct, correct. And I think the government is also taking really huge steps in, cybersecurity because recently I had last time I had a call talk with one of the cloud expert and we were discussing about same thing like setting up cloud or setting up any kind of servers in that particular country. We have to follow a lot of rules which are only like related to that particular government. So each government can have different rules and setting up a server
Yeah.
maybe it is on prem, maybe it is data center. It's really very huge, and all the cyber laws, like a lot of governments can have different cyber laws as well. So like getting
Yeah.
aligned with
Yeah.
that and then setting up these things is really huge thing, and I think governments also play a very vital role in these kind of setups and
And
technologies.
exactly. And the good part is the big players like, Microsoft, Amazon, GCP,
Google.
right?
Hmm.
They really are cracking this piece by working with the governments and making sure that they are making it available to, small businesses, medium businesses, or even large businesses, where business don't
Correct.
tend to worry about like, what exactly the rules to be followed. It's just like, if you are creating a data set or database in Germany or maybe in UK, you are that compliant,
Correct.
right?
So now, since we are moving ahead, and I think one of the important piece of this puzzle is data. So one thing I wanted to ask you, like, how can companies protect their cloud-based data from cyber attacks? Like, are there any hard or soft rules? As you said, being hygiene about the way you structure your
Yeah.
social profiles and all. So how do you think that companies should safeguard their data from cyber attacks, and what all preventions they can take initial at an initial stage.
So again, if we talk about data, let's try to understand the data life cycle at a very very higher level. A data is like something. Let's say take our conversation, right? So I'm creating a data by saying something that is getting created, right? That is going through a secure channel, and that is staying with you, right? As form of podcast or something like that. So there are three notions. If you talk about cloud, right? All the cloud vendors are always HTTP. So your data transit or data transfer is always on HTTP. Just to give you a product example, Office 365 breaks your data once you save the data. Let's say you save it as a file, as a Word document, right? That breaks the data and elaborates in multiple places with the encryption keys, right? So data, we call it data at rest, like when you're keeping the data somewhere, right? That's encrypted, that's secure. Now the data in transit, because it's HTTPS, right? It's already taken care of, right? Nobody can, like, there will not be a possibility of man in the middle to kind of change the data or change the signal, because it's all encrypted. Same
Mhm.
thing when you're starting the data, you are sending it maybe from your on-prem data center, right? Which is already secure. You have been securing that for years. So that's the whole notion or hygiene of cloud security. So by design, I would say data in cloud is secure. And only thing we need to care about is when you move the data to cloud, right? Because we open up a huge possibility. We need to put the access control first in place with the least privilege, right? It's not like everybody has a global admin
Mhm.
access or administrator access.
Correct.
Just be very very strong on your access management, and put a compliance, and should have a very very good life cycle on the access management. Let's say there are options like privileged identity management. So let's see, if I'm an admin for a subscription, right? So when I log in, I don't get that access by default. What happens is I log in as a normal,
Mhm.
very minimal usage. Based on my need, I have to make a request to privilege myself up, right? We call it PIM. And then that can be also controlled, like how long should I have, like if I are going to have it for 1 hour, 2 hour, things like that. And then the approval can be manual or automated and
Mhm.
things like that. So with this control in place, it's very very easy to kind of protect, right? And that's how you should be protecting. And obviously you should put a compliance and the life cycle management on your access reviews and things like that. So that's how I'd say to protect your data. Now obviously there are certain other compliances like GDPR and HIPAA and all those things. Those cloud vendors take care of it. So again, just to reiterate, data is secure until unless you give access to random
Correct.
one, right? Yeah. and
Correct.
and and
I
not
think
only
one of
that,
the
not only that, yeah, just to
Mhm.
add to it, right? Not only that, once we talk
Mhm.
about that, so once data is in, right, the
Mhm.
flexibility or the advantage of cloud we have, we really can track who is accessing what data. And there are a lot of machine learning models running behind the scene which understands the behavior, or you can write your own detection. Just to give you a very
Correct.
popular example, employees leaving an organization, right? So
Mhm.
a manual way to track it, like look at how much office files he's accessing. If he's accessing 50% more than he has been accessing in last 1 month, there is an alert. And that's
Mhm.
only possible because you're in cloud, and cloud has a very very verbose level of telemetry done,
Correct.
right? So one
Mhm.
thing is protect the right way, and beyond that, even you can go beyond that, and there are products on compliance side, right?
Mhm.
Which again goes with your behavior, and I've been talking too much about behavior, so let me also a little bit explain behavior in the sense, it may be capturing a lot of my activities when I sign in, who are my peers, like it can see like my co-authors in my documents and excel files and powerpoint, right? It can see how frequent I share my files to other people, who are the other people. So it's kind of building a graph, if you just understand like that Facebook's graph model,
Correct.
right? It's trying to
Hmm.
create an office graph for each person. Again, the person is an
Hmm.
identity here. So if I'm working in an organization where, like, say there are 5,000 people, right? So Microsoft is trying to build the product, and Microsoft is trying to build a graph around that, who is connected to whom. If something goes bigger or something gets small in the graph, that kind of flags an alert. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of creating a trend, like what's going on with
Yeah.
a specific person, and then it tries to
Right.
identify the flow, and if there is any huge curve or any change, I think that's how it detects
Yeah.
a red flag. I think one of the things that cloud has benefited more, as I said, that and at the end of the day, anyone, even it maybe it is a big company, small company, or a personal, a single guy or folk, they all are caring about the convenience that is being provided with security. Of course, that is the biggest concern. We
Yeah.
should be aware about security that we are getting, but I think convenience plus security is something that cloud has provided, because of which
Yeah.
people are tending to move towards the cloud a lot. And with
Yeah.
that shift, now they should be aware about what level of security is required in cloud, and from them what is expected. So be it a company
Yeah.
CEO, so he something from him is expected different than what a new fresher or a new joinee who is going to work on cloud. So as you said, don't give access to anyone immediately as they join. So that is what I think at different stages for a person. I think a different level of expertise or different level of awareness towards the security as one specific domain, if we are considering right now
Yeah.
for the topic, is needed from for them. So yeah, I think that
Right.
yeah, that's really a great piece of information that needs to be thought of very carefully. So moving on.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, little bit addition here. So if we
mm,
talk about layman terms, cloud
mm,
gives you a room with lot of doors open, right?
correct.
It and it gives you the keys also. It's totally your responsibility. So fundamentally, cloud is has to be understood by the security architects or security managers, that you get really a big room where you can do anything, and room has lot of windows and lot of doors. It's up to you how you play the role of a shared responsibility model and make
Correct.
the gates which is convenient for you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are going to come to shared responsibility as well. But before that, I think there was
Yeah.
one question that I wanted to ask. Now, since you said you gave an example of Office 365, that when you are pushing a file to Office 365, it is being broken down into pieces and then stored in the cloud.
Yeah.
So, is this a part of a kind of encryption? One thing, and the follow up is like, what role does encryption play in cloud security?
So, as you can see, encryption by default is one of the oldest trick of the books to secure data, right? And there are 100 numbers, like, and day by day, like it is you know increasing, like how much you can encrypt. And it also somehow, we should not be using too much of big encryption, because it might look faster when you do 1 or 2 bits of encryption, but if you look at it at a scale, it really takes a big chunk of time, though it might be in
Mm,
millisecond. But if you multiply millisecond into million, that becomes a big number. So
correct.
obviously encryption is something, is basically, even if your data is lost or protect, it's just from a threat protection. I mean, yeah, something is stolen, something is compromised, right? You are, until unless you're using that exact interface of that application, your data is not decrypted and joined back in readable format or consumable format. Keeping
Mm,
data at rest with encryption helps it. One thing is, like, if you let's say have a compromise, right? And somehow somebody gets some data, right? uh, they cannot make sense about of it. Let's talk
mm,
about the laptops. We all work from home, it's all covered by Intune mostly, right? And
mm.
even you cannot basically format that. Even if you try to format, right, it picks up its own place, right? So either it will be wiped or it will be locked out. So that's kind of a thing you cannot, without a BitLocker encryption, you might not be able to open it, right? So that's one of
Mhm.
the things. And uh, recent times, right, you can have your own encryption key. Like there are products which support customer encryption. So if you don't even trust a vendor, right, let's say you don't know what key they're using, and there is an obvious chance, or there's an obvious ask, right? Maybe the possibility is once in a million, but there's obvious ask that, I'm using a vendor. What if that key the vendor is using, that is compromised or stolen? The attacker
Correct.
can definitely decrypt that, right?
Yes,
So now,
yes,
now
yes.
that flexibility is also given to the consumer, or anybody who is like a, we are consuming the cloud, that we can
Hmm.
bring our own keys in the products and use that key to encrypt it. So
Hmm.
even the cannot vendor cannot, go beyond and break our data and sneak into it. That's
Correct.
one thing, right? Second
Hmm.
thing is just in the context of encryption. If you look at when the contract happens, right, mostly in organization there are like enterprise level of contracts, right, and those are signed between the organization and the vendor, and they clearly specify, there are multiple layers of security. Even there's an employee gets in to clean the room in a data, I'd say, yeah, in some of the data centers, right, that access is controlled and that is logged.
Hmm.
If you really want to know it from a legal standpoint, you get it.
Correct. Okay.
So yeah, definitely this is something encryption plays a really nice role. And if it is a SaaS, right, obviously SaaS on
Hmm.
the product owner, like who is the vendor, let's say any vendor, for that example Microsoft or anybody else, they use their own keys because you're already giving them the freedom to serve
Hmm.
you a software on a license
Correct.
basis, right? But if you talk
Hmm.
about using a product, let's say a PaaS service, maybe storage, maybe SQL Server and things like that, there are products which supports to bring the customer key in so that the customer
Hmm.
can really encrypt data at their
Okay.
choice.
Mhm.
Yep.
I think so. So as you are saying, to be precise, it's like what what kind of product or service, or platform you are using. Based on that, there are different level of encryption. There are different level of securities provided to the user. Is that right? Correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
right. That's exactly right.
Hmm. Correct, correct.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to, like, this is again not in the exact context that we are speaking about, but since we are talking about security and all, one thing I wanted to mention, there is a documentary called Social Dilemma. By any chance have you heard about it or watched? So
I don't, sorry, I don't think I've seen that, but
yeah, but so basically, so I'll give you a quick context, and this is in because this is
yeah.
we are talking about something that is very sensitive topic. What exactly they have
Yeah.
shown is, so there are folks who have already worked in like tech giants like Facebook and Google and all, and they are explaining how the social platforms they are using your data to manipulate the thought process of people, all this
Hmm.
recommendation ads news all this uh, notifications whenever we are speaking. So one experience that I personally had was like I was speaking about one of the movie, and suddenly a notification from the one of the app came up that there is an offer for this particular movie. So I
Yeah.
am like amazed that even though there are so much huge laws and securities that are being added by the government, by the cyber laws department and all, and yet somehow there is always a way to find out, okay, what the vendors or the tech giants wants to show to the people in some or the other ways. I'm not saying that they are using our personal data or they are able to see at it, but as you mentioned that there is always a trend observation going on in the cloud for a user or for anyone at the end of the day. Like that, they are also trying to, see a trend, what is going on, and then what we should show. That is a good thing from one sense, but still that is again a security risk as well, because a wrong information can manipulate or change the whole perspective of a huge mass of crowd. And I think that is really something that the future should look into. I think that's what the Web3 or the blockchain concept was.
Right.
working.
You really brought the piece all together, and that's really nice. Now, let me try to get the things together in the context of cloud security. So, as I mentioned, obviously the telemetry is verbose, right? But that doesn't mean it is allowed to everyone. That's where the zero trust comes in, right?
Mm,
And there are legalities and legal terms, right? And if you look at this SOC centers and security centers, right? They are mostly within a controlled environment where you cannot even take out data out of it. You work as an analyst, you go there, you understand, you complete and come out, right? And
mm,
you're also
mm,
compliant by ABC laws. So that's one thing. Definitely data collection is a good thing. And day by day, if you look at things, right, there are a lot of data sets which is collected, right, and
mm,
which is available if you want to query them. But most of them are basically trained with machine learning models and machine learning rules, and based on the data it has, right? And as I said, if you use a product like Defender, right, anybody anywhere in the world something comes up, that gets flagged for every customer, if that is
mm,
seen, right? So same way machine learning model is trying to have, is getting this bigger data sets day by day, and they're getting more accurate, and we're trying to reduce more of manual intervention in terms of deciding it's a risk or not a risk. But having said
mm.
that, a human element and human judgment is something which nobody can fail,
Correct,
right?
correct.
So it's more of a, it's more of a personal hygiene and mindset which will take you further, right? And
Correct.
obviously business is a good thing. And I can also quote out some example. As you said, when you talk about something, you suddenly saw ad pop up. So
Mm,
that's where, if you talk about, right, so we always given a specific configuration if we are working from office or home with a particular endpoint, right? And they are really secured. I mean, we might not be realizing that they are secure because physically they look the same, right? But
yeah.
if you try to do certain things, and then if you dig down on the things, right? Let's say if I go to my sign-ins in my office portal, right, I can literally see not only my IP address, my location, and what is the ISP, and even where the ISP has routed the traffic from, right?
Correct.
So it's not on it's see, if you look at data, right, there are two things. One, giving everybody's data to some people, a group of people, and you should only give whom you can trust. So that has to be
Mm,
there, right? And that's what the team is built. Now, even from an individual perspective, right, the way we get benefited is like, let's say if I'm setting up some meetings, right, for a week or so, and then if that comes and tells me you have spent this much of time in meeting, right, that also helps me to understand, not only from a security construct, no, I'm just not spending the right time on writing code. Maybe I'm
mm,
spending more times in
correct.
meeting. So there
Mm,
are two sides of it, but always there is a good side. And I
correct,
would say
correct.
security control is one thing. Personal hygiene can only come through education and mindset.
Correct, correct. Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, data is by like without any doubt very important in this in this time of century, and even the government is aware of that. Like recently I've seen a
Yeah.
post where government has opened up a lot of data sets of the government data, which is like not too sensitive and the people can look at it, and they have like they have opened it up for the people to get the data set and build out projects around it to solve some of the problems. So I think that was really
Right.
something that was really amazing, and I was not aware about that. So I got really excited to check it out and see what kind of data it is. So yeah, as you're saying, there is always a good side to it, and if we are aware enough of what we need to do, then I think there are a whole lot of opportunities to do something good out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So moving on. Now, next to that, since one of the things that you mentioned, and I said that it is going to come out, that is shared responsibility. So, what
Yeah.
exactly is the shared responsibility model in cloud? And again, in lamest possible terms, because we are noobs, we are watching you. So,
So I mean again, the technical term is infrastructure, platform, and service, right?
mhm,
Give you again the oldest example, Google Drive. It's a SaaS example where you just, maybe we might be using it as a free, but there are Google Drive subscription which you pay monthly. So you use a software, which is online, and the vendor who is selling it, they are responsible to control the data inside it, and the functionalities inside it, and give you some sort of facilities when you use that, and you pay a monthly subscription for that or yearly subscription for that, right? And it's up to the vendor with how they keep the data, how they structure the things. But obviously if they are doing something from a legal standpoint, every time you sign up for anything, you can see that there is a lot of terms and conditions they want you to
Correct.
accept, right? So
Yeah.
that's how they make you aware that you are also responsible for the data you're sharing with us.
Correct.
That's on
Correct.
SaaS, right? But technically we don't even, I would say,
Uh,
care what is there in the terms and conditions.
we'll scroll
but
down
but
and tick it.
exactly. So that's one of the things where you are responsible, where you are being made aware, but in a very soft way, right? Because mostly
Hmm.
that is taken care, all the updates are taken care of by the vendor. You are only responsible for the data you're sharing there.
Correct.
Another
Correct.
thing is, the next level is kind of platform, right? So
Hmm.
platform can be, let's say a SQL database, right? Or MongoDB, right? There are cloud vendors who give you MongoDB, just you click on button clicks, I need this much instance and this is the configuration, they spin it up. Same goes for Azure SQL. You create something, maybe in BigQuery you create something, you get the platform. And mostly the vendor who is providing, like let's say Microsoft or any other, Amazon or sometimes provide the Mongo free instances, right? They are responsible to configure what is behind the scene, what is the hardware, what is the things over there. What's your responsibility, what data you keep. Also, you are creating a database, you can give it access to anyone you want. Now that's totally up to you. So the responsibility is
Hmm.
little grown here, right? Because you have the flexibility, you can create application on top of it, right? You can build other softwares, or you can build your own SaaS on using that service. So platform is little more in terms of responsibility. It's not that you just, there also you have to agree on terms and condition, but beyond that you need to also manage certain things other than doing
Correct.
your work, right?
Hmm.
That's one thing. Third thing is, that's like where the major cloud shift happened. And I think the most of the companies, everybody try to migrate their infrastructure, because if you look at the old days, any infrastructure or any server bought, that is bought for 5 years, and they were huge cost, like they used to be a huge cost for that. That's why even if you want to scale up, you cannot scale up because there's no budget or something like that. Now,
Hmm.
if you want to adopt the same thing in cloud, because cloud had made it possible with the huge scale they have in terms of data centers, and then a couple of years back, Microsoft has dipped a whole data center underwater to make sure it
Correct.
works, right? So,
Yeah.
so there is no scarcity of place anymore. It can be
Yeah.
the data center can be as, I mean, looks like there's a plan to kind of manufacture data centers itself, right? And that's what the thing is. So if you are given a data center, you are technically given an entire hardware what you need. So then in that hardware, let's say there's a notion shift also came in, right? Kubernetes and operating system. You go to Kubernetes when you need very less dependencies. You just need your stuff to be running, that's all. You don't care about what OS and things like that. But if there
Correct.
are
Hmm.
application, like let's say you want to host a SQL server, you cannot host a SQL server on a Kubernetes pod because it needs 14.3.3 port to be open to communicate, right?
Hmm.
That's where you need an operating system. Now, depending on what you need, right, you can, let's say Kubernetes, the server layer is not that important. You just need the concept, you need the logic, and you need the architecture to be running. But if you are running an application which runs a SQL server, which has a front end, that needs a server. Now, how do you get a server? And also, I think Flipkart had the scenario when they had fail on a sale day, right? That's where
Correct.
this
I remember.
scalability concept, yeah,
Hmm.
came up really big time. So now, because the cloud vendor is giving you that much flexibility that you can, create your own infrastructure. So one
Hmm.
thing is the cost goes really high, because you are getting really the hardware at a lot cheaper price. The cost is higher. Second thing is, because they are giving you the server, as I said, the more bigger you go, the more bigger room you get with more doors. Now you have to
Correct.
maintain the patch, you have to maintain the OS. I mean, it totally up to you. You put Linux, you put Windows on it, or you put any other operating system on it, right?
Hmm.
So that's
Hmm.
totally on your responsibility. you are also charged at times for the licenses what is running inside. Let's say you're running a SQL server, you might need to pay a license. You're running any other software which you need to pay a license for. So coming from top to bottom, technically, if I call infrastructure as services, you are actually given your whole data center in a form of web portal, right, where you can
Correct.
create, upgrade,
Hmm.
and also there are a lot of flexibilities. Like,
Hmm.
think about the old days. You are running a 5 server farm in your production, right? Something goes wrong, or maybe you need to scale up, you have to add one server. So for that, there
Hmm.
has to be a weekend maintenance activity. The application has to go down, you have to connect the server, enroll the software, and then do a sanity check and bring it up, right? There used to be
Correct.
downtime, but with cloud, you get the infrastructure with configuration. Let's say you can really configure, if my CPU usage for 3 server goes more than 80%, get one more. So that
Correct.
flexibility definitely cost you money, right? And
Correct.
also, you are responsible what you do. Like, you have written 80%. Now that 80% can grow because somebody has written a wrong SQL query, or that may be due to real load. Like, instead of, let's say you've written a query, instead of select one, you have select like 1 lakh, right? That
Yeah.
one small change
That,
will drastically kill your entire thing. So yeah,
correct. Yeah, I think
so that's what I would say. Yeah,
yeah, you really cleared it up again. That why another point that why cloud is being so much popular is because of the scalability. So or maybe it
yeah,
vertically or maybe horizontally. I think scaling is pretty just one click away, and you will be able
yeah,
to scale. So that is really great.
yeah.
And yeah, I think one more thing, like Flipkart you mentioned, I think Hotstar also faced this issue. I think during the
I
one,
think,
I think the
and the biggest, I I don't remember the Hotstar old one, but recently Hotstar really did a big job on the IPL. I think it was
hmm
3.2 crores is what they streamed
correct,
live.
correct, correct,
Now
correct, correct.
think
Yeah.
of,
So
I mean, big,
that was because of
yeah,
IPL only. I think they messed up at the first
yeah,
time. That is long back. I think 1 or 2 years back. I don't remember. But afterwards,
yeah,
they redesigned the whole structure of the way their platform is based, and they really did a great job.
yeah,
I think they have one of the most audience viewer audience during the IPL times. I think that's
right,
really something to admire from Hotstar. I think that's really great.
yeah,
And as you
really
said, that
nice.
data centers in water, I think the future is like data center will be in space and it will be from SpaceX, I guess. Elon Musk might put up one
So
of the space, data center in SpaceX in space orbit. Okay.
never know.
So, you're saying something?
No, I just say, we talked about a lot of positive things, but
Hmm.
one thing I would definitely encourage.
Hmm.
Cloud might be a lucrative topic, and I've seen a lot of people just like, learning half of the things and start doing things. So it's really a good idea to do hands-on and learn. I also do learn the same way. But if
Hmm.
you're one of them who really want to do hands-on and learn, right, try to do it in a lot controlled environment, right? Because one thing is the cost, right? Let's say you create a VM, you don't know what's the VM sizing, and then end of the month your credit card is just, that's one thing.
Yeah.
And second thing is, if you are doing a testing, right, be very careful about what data you are using for testing. Let's say you should not be, for example, using your bank statement for doing your Python queries, because let's say, at some point you put that into your GitHub repo, and then that is a sample data set. That's not good. So be aware, right? So, and this is one of the shift I have seen and have learned from being a developer or into security. In development, you get really a scope of POCs and things like that. You do hit and trial, keep doing things, and keep breaking things and make it work in the developer's way. But in security, the notion, at least it works for me, study a lot, follow a lot, learn a lot, and then do it the most optimized way and do it at lesser chances. Because
Hmm.
once you are
Correct,
compromised, there's no second chance.
correct, correct, correct. Security, I think, is a really sensitive topic to
Yeah,
do the
again,
trial and error part.
yes.
Okay, so moving on again. What do we have? So one thing again, I wanted to ask you is that uh, people do have a lot of misconceptions, in any domain you take it up. So maybe it is a cloud security, maybe it is a mlai. Again, we are going to come at mlai at the end of the session in another one or two questions. But what do you think are the major misconceptions that you have seen and you want to clear it out, which are related to cloud security or cloud in general?
So, first of all, a lot of people think that the biggest misconception, if I'm going to cloud, as I said, I'm going unsecure, I am going open the ground and things like that. So as I said, right, it depends, and you have to really understand when you are going into cloud, right? It's not that you are going or shifting something. It's always to think that we are leaping into a shared responsibility model. The moment we do that, right, we have to realize that there are some responsibilities the vendor takes, some responsibility we as a owner take of the application. The moment we get this clear, I don't think cloud is going to be a unsafe place or not secure place. It's more about the understanding. With the understanding, we approach cloud. So that's one of the things, right? Another thing is like, in cloud, it will scale, and then I'd say, can I do this, can I do that, limitation on and the depth of the technology. So really it is, I mean, definitely you might need to alter vendors and check which product fit for, let's say you're doing some project on data, you might be going to one place, you might be doing some project on identities and application, you might go to another vendor, right, which is totally fine. But there are products which are really supported till the depth you can think of, right? So there is
Hmm.
no such thing which you can do, let's say in your local host or your local machine can't do in cloud. There are possibilities, it just takes a little education and little hands on to get there, right?
Yeah, I think the cloud is asking the user to become a bit more mature. Previously, like the people had a point where they can blame for some issue, but cloud
Yeah,
has grown to a point where I think the user has to be similarly mature as the people are expecting the cloud security, or maybe the
exactly.
cloud or the vendors to be. And then
Yeah.
that mutual handshake will create an awesome collaboration between the user and the clouds.
And uh, And if you talk about big organizations, so there are specific job roles. Let's say if you're leading a team or if you're architecting an application, right? So mostly it's your falls into your plate of responsibilities that you amplify that learning. Now you know your people around you the best. You know you can do it by advocating, or you can do it
Correct.
in a structured way through some training and all. Totally up to you. But that responsibility should come from that technical point who is doing the technical hand holding of that cloud.
Correct. Correct. Okay, so I think there are two of my favorite topics that are left now. One is AI in cloud. So since I have listened to you talking about, how Defender is being combined with AI, to do a real-time threat analysis in cloud. So there are two questions in single. One is like, what exactly Defender with AI is doing in cloud? That is one thing. And where do you think the AI is having a future in cloud, and how it is going to help the any kind of user in security? With again the Defender examples will be totally fine.
That's a really nice question, I'd say, and the answer cannot be the one liner. The way it works, right? Every product, if you talk about data, as I said, the biggest shift is right. 10 years back, we used to run antiviruses on users' machine, and one virus caught in one machine, we never know that's caught, and it was very very difficult to kind of get a new virus signature into all the machines, right? Now with that Defender or any of the cloud, the EDR products, like there are Cloud Strike and there are Carbon Black and things like that. So there are products which had made this possible, wherein you can collect the data centrally. The moment you get the data right for all the users, AI comes into play, because AI really needs more food for
Great.
learning, right? So
Mhm.
defender made it possible. Now the models used behind the scene, right, there are a couple of things
Mhm.
which companies like Microsoft do, that they learn, right, their model, that can be behavior, and that can be, as a say supervised or unsupervised. Mostly they will be supervised, but because in security, like what you are comparing, yes, right, security has a
Mhm.
standard to follow to. So that's like goes in a supervised model, right, with the user data, and try to get aligned to that, and then
Mhm.
that comes up with a recommendation behind the scene. That's how it works. Now it doesn't stop there. If you are matured enough, right, you can, let's say you're running a security operations center, you can write your own ML algorithms to, let's say if you want to use defender or don't want to rely on defender's data, you can have your own ML models, right? You can, let's say you are a 100-year-old company, right, and you have all the data stacked up. You can train the model, see what's the let's say you are a traditional company, that's totally fine. So you can train that, and you can create incident based on that particular thing. So
True,
obviously,
true.
yes, and going forward, right, AI is blending in a very natural way with products like Defender, that you don't
Mhm.
even realize there is another part of, like, you don't realize in some time that AI is implemented in Defender. So
Correct.
you'll feel like that's what Defender is. So that's what the evolution is what I see these
Correct.
days.
Right. Yeah, I think that's really a great, I think great step that has been taken in, in this in cloud, as well as I think this will go on in the regular machines as well, where they'll be, sending up the reports to the cloud and then analyzing a lot of things. Okay, so we are almost at the end of the podcast here, and I think this was really a great insight that you have gave us. Before ending up, there's always one of my favorite question: where do you see cloud in next 5 years?
So I'll definitely pick up on one of the things you said, that's Web3, because the reason I say that, right, it's not very specific to security, but the reason I say that, that's the first thing I've seen in my lifetime, a human-made thing which cannot be copied, right? Because in blockchain, everybody can see what's going on, and it's a little tricky because normal people, I mean, when I say normal people, anybody who doesn't know or is not yet learned Web3 or blockchain and understand what's going on. But once you understand, and there are a lot of resources, outside open source, which can help you out. But if you look at that, that's going to be the one, yes, because all going to be get transactional. And when any technology comes in, right, security is a part and parcel of it. So security is going to stay there, obviously. Now, with security, what's going to happen is, with the recent changes, I'd say AI, ML is the first step we should do. Still, that's in learning stage, and a lot of us need to learn that, and it's obvious that we should learn that first. But with AI, like even in security products, the way AI is blending in, and alongside security, every other product, the way AI is blending in, right? Going forward, AI will be a very, very abstract layer for every application, where every application will definitely use it, but nobody will call it out. So being there, it'll not be seen there, but it'll be always there even after 5 years. So yeah, that's what I would say. And also, apart from technology, I think this time I can see a shift the way we consume technology. The mobile came in, then we become a mobile consumer. Now obviously, needless to say, chat gpt came in, the way we
Correct.
consume it. But I would say this is very, very early stage, but the way we consume content, the way we create content, right, it's not that, I'm saying that go to chat gpt and start writing and then start posting everything, but it really makes you, let's say you are a content creator, for example, you can use chat gpt as an your companion to give you a first hand review on anything you're doing. So the quality, right, the quality what you're producing or what we have been producing on any field, which gets a lot better through that AI reviewer, right? So that's what I would say. These are the things going to stay in my opinion. But
Great, great.
let's see.
I think yeah, AI is going to play a vital role in coming future, but
Yeah.
let's see what happens. So thank you, Samik. Thank you for your time, and hope we'll have another chat soon in another series of podcast with another topic, which you might give us more insights about. And thank you for the audience for giving me a quick view on this. And if you like the video, make sure you like it, share it with all the enthusiasts who want to learn something new, and keep innovating. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.